Always curious, Professor George Washington Carver committed his life to scholarship, community, and the integration of his Christian faith with higher education. It's in this spirit we welcome you to Carver Classrooms. Led by a diverse set of faculty guides, this series will explore contemporary questions at the crossroads of knowledge, faith, and wonder. These nationally recognized teachers are both practicing Christians and respected academics, working at the highest levels of education around the country. We hope this series can be an encouragement. In our time together, we aim to translate complex issues into usable Christian frameworks for everyday life and ministry. My name is John Hendricks. I invite you to join us as we explore God's gift of knowledge and draw aside the curtain together. Hello again. My name is John Hendricks. I'm an artist and illustrator, and welcome to my studio. If you don't know me, I'm a New York Times best-selling illustrator and author of many picture books, comics, graphic novels, and I'm also a professor of art in the MFA Illustration and Visual Culture program. I'm the chair there at Washington University in St. Louis. So those are my credentials. Take them or leave them. So today we're going to spend some time over the next 3 videos talking about a basic Christian framework for looking at art, making art, and enjoying art in community. Well, it's at least as much as I understand art, based on 17 years of teaching and many, many more years of making and enjoying art and design. So first of all, I want to suggest that this is not the only way to think about art. But I've cultivated this framework over many years of my practice and of teaching, and so I hope it can be helpful to you as you explore your assumptions about art. All right, first of all, in this class, we're going to be talking about what is art. In the next class, we'll talk about the why behind art making, and in the third class, we'll talk about how, art as worship. So now let's go back to this phrase, artist. What image comes to mind when you conjure the phrase artist in your mind? Maybe if you're honest, starving artist is one of the things you think about. Maybe deep down you think it's kind of not practical, or you admire it, but maybe you wouldn't want your kid to study art in college. Maybe you even think it's a little self-indulgent or useless. Well, before we begin, I want to highlight this quote from writer Wendell Berry. The significance and ultimately the quality of the work we do is determined by our understanding of the story in which we are taking part. So, what story are you telling? What story are we telling? Let's take these 2 phrases, artist and Christian. Now, we all know I have to pick one of those. I can't be both, right? Okay, you may be laughing. That's not exactly true. You might even think that is a bit absurd in this day to believe you can't be both at the same time. But if you're being honest, if you're inside the church, or maybe you're skeptical of the church, you may actually assume that you can't be a good artist and a good Christian. Or maybe one makes you suspicious of the other. So now actually we have to unpack this phrase, Christian art. What comes to mind when I say that? You're probably not thinking of the Sistine Chapel, right? I mean, that's the highest form of Christian art that we have, at least in a Western context. That is the apex of Christian art. So what is the lowest form of Christian art? Or what's the thing you think of first when we see the phrase Christian art? And as American born in the late 20th century, I know for me, certain images come to mind. They're not really that great. In fact, some of them are kind of problematic theologically. Now, I'm not trying to disparage art that is in many cases made with a genuine heart and a desire to share their emotional experience with the story of Jesus. And we also have to be careful to guard against real elitism when thinking about our Christian culture. But I do want you to examine the visual culture of the American 20th and 21st century church. What has that been? What has that communicated to us, maybe unintentionally? And it's not quite as easy as you think to distinguish between good Christian art and bad Christian art. We think we know what that is, but let's take the example of the very kitschy Jesus Nightlight. Now, I'd like to suggest that before you dismiss the Jesus Nightlight, that little piece of art has done more work on behalf of the Holy Spirit to comfort scared children in the middle of the night than the Sistine Chapel ever will. So, evaluating art is simply about evaluating our criteria for what art is supposed to be doing. And that's what we're debating when we debate the meaning of art. Now, the very fact that we even have this category of Christian art is part of what is problematic if you set out to make art as a Christian, like me. So now I think the question is no longer, can we be both artist and Christian? I think that has been settled by generations before us. But now, how do we do that? What kind of an art can a Christian make, or what kind of art must a Christian make? In fact, Madeleine L'Engle said this. She said, all good art is Christian art. All right, let's take a step back and look at that word, art in and of itself. What is art? What do we think qualifies as art? Let's go back in our minds to the year 1722. And maybe we walk into a space and we see something like this beautiful handmade dresser decorated with handmade medallions, beautifully painted and embellished. This is what art meant to someone in that era, something that was beautifully crafted and well made. And if you go up 100 years to 1822, art might have meant a history painting like this John Singleton Copley painting. But we come 100 years from that to 1922, and here we have an upside-down urinal in a gallery signed by someone named R. Mutt, and we are told that this is art. So art all of a sudden moved from being about craft or maybe about narrative to the intention of the artist. Now, you probably don't realize how much this upside-down urinal changed the way that you actually imagine what art is or what it's supposed to be doing. This urinal may have produced in you an intense skepticism about the value and purpose of art. And honestly, I totally get the skepticism. So now let's take that beautiful dresser I showed you earlier and move it into a contemporary gallery today, alone in a white box. Now, I spent 7 years in art school, and now I teach in one for the last 17. And if I went into a gallery and saw this beautiful dresser in a white box, I honestly might wonder, am I missing the idea? Am I supposed to see something in this dresser in a special way? Or is it just merely beautiful? So even in my studio, actually right over there, I have this image. This has become such a cultural meme that it has now been turned into products like Understanding Modern Art Instantly breath spray. But in fact, you don't even know how much you need art, even if you think you don't. I think it's helpful actually to think about art making inside of these two buckets, which we're going to unpack: mystery and clarity. And in fact, these are things which are so valuable to God. These two giant buckets, mystery and clarity, they're very difficult to achieve. But I actually think making art is this kind of enchanted intersection that allows these two things to combine in new and interesting ways. And in fact, I tell people when you go to a gallery, if you don't know how to look at art, use these two poles as a way to explore what you're seeing. How much of what I'm looking at is illuminating mystery and how much is illuminating clarity? Let me show you a few examples, especially in the mystery side. It's like this Pontus Wilfor's rocking chair, or Washington University professor Cheryl Wassenaar's sculpture Decibel, created from salvaged signage and pieces of found typography recreated to make a new visual composition. Or the famous Andy Goldsworthy, who takes objects in the natural environment and combines them into unusual shapes and then photographs them, and then they disappear and decay. Or Tim Hawkinson, a Catholic artist who made this Mobius ship. Now, what does this mean? Is it meant to mean anything? Is it meant to just awaken your desire to think about the unknown? Now, what do I mean by this bucket of clarity? Well, think about Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell, who was the king of American illustration, at least in the 20th century. But what do illustrators do? They communicate something in a way that we haven't seen before. Or this Chris Ware drawing of a New Yorker cover showing Thanksgiving from 1940 to 2010. or even this diagram of the federal government. Something we are seeing through art making that is unseeable. That's what clarity brings in the making of art. And in fact, that's what I think of in my own work when I make a graphic novel or a comic like this one about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. How do you tell the story about a man who was committed to his faith, but also chose to join a plot to assassinate Hitler? And many times, comics and art making is what helps bridge that gap. So, in fact, one of the ways I express my own kind of love of mystery and clarity is drawing in my sketchbook and drawing in church. And when I'm drawing and I'm listening to those sermons, I translate them from the word into image. And it's a way for me to respond to the Bible. It's a way for me to respond to the things that I see and I hear in my mind, and I get to act in worship and art making. So, as you may have guessed, really the best works of art are the ones that capture and engage both the aspects of mystery and clarity simultaneously. And a perfect example of this is found in the Bible. The parables of Jesus are a perfect example of art making deepening clarity and mystery at the same time. Think about the story of the prodigal son and how much richer the meaning of that teaching is when it's received through the art of story. Much more profound than just if Jesus had told us the ethical principle involved, and also much more haunting. I mean, we'll never know if the older brother joined the party for his lost brother. All right, now relax. You don't have to like everything. I'm really just telling you I think you should be curious. Why? Because both aspects of mystery and clarity are beautiful. Beauty is the thing that unites those two spheres in God's mind. Both are qualities in the world that God loves and are quite hard to achieve in their purest form. And beauty doesn't mean beautiful or pretty exactly. Bringing clarity to a horrid evil in the world is an act of beauty, even if the work itself is ugly. Let me show you this painting by Makoto Fujimura. Now, what do you see here? Are you lost? Are you not getting it? Do you think my kid could have done this? Well, I'd like to suggest that this painting is the same as that beautiful 17th century cabinet in the modern gallery. You're not missing anything. In fact, Mako says if you like fireworks, you'll like abstract art. There is something rare and unusual when we are moved in an encounter with unexpected and unusual beauty. It does not need to be an image of the literal Jesus. It does not need to be literal anything. So ask yourself this: when was the last time you had an encounter with beauty that moved you to ask the question, what does it all mean? Let me show you a short clip from a viral video you may have seen before.
Oh my God, it's full on double rainbow all the way across the sky. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh God. What does this mean?
What does it mean? All right, I love this video, partially because we see the entire range of human emotion, from being in awe of beauty, being overcome with wonder, and then finally he's moved to tears and he says, what does it mean? That is the right response to looking at art. That is the right response to looking at God's art. In fact, C.S. Lewis, noted writer and theologian, said this: art can baptize our imaginations. He was writing about his own experience of experiencing art making, the story by George MacDonald's Fantastes that changed the way he thought about what his heart longed for in the world and through the art he enjoyed. So the beautiful thing about mystery and clarity is we really don't want those separate categories. We want them to be unified into a kind of new creation, a kind of gestalt. Gestalt means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But as we learn in the Bible, the new creation is not just a merging of what was old with what was new, but a kind of wholeness that is completely reinvented, a brand new creation that we both recognize and is completely unrecognizable. So if there's one thing I want you to take away, it is that art is really a conduit for seeing as someone else does. And through this lens, art is not a selfish endeavor, but actually, it's others-centric. You're learning to see with new eyes. Tim Keller famously says this, that there's two ways to make art. And it's kind of like if you're wearing glasses. And let's say Jesus was these glasses. I could put these glasses on the table and I can make a painting of them and it would be well done and beautiful. But I can also put the glasses on and I can describe to the world what I see through the lens of Jesus. Thank you.